Google announced what will and won't be shipping with Stadia next week. There's some things you need to know. What's up everybody, Brad here, and yesterday Google took to Reddit to do an AMA, and there were some really genuinely good questions asked about what will and won't be working with Stadia on day one. Now, we already know the launch titles, there's 12 of them, 3 of them being Tomb Raider, but as I did in a video earlier this week, the TLDW of that is, hey, let's pay attention to the technology, because if that's working really well, then the games, while they do matter, there's a much longer tailed future rather than just the initial 12 launch titles, which we'll all forget about in a couple months anyways when more titles hit the platform. But, and this is a big but, there's a lot of features that aren't going to be available on Stadia on day one that Google has talked about. So let's just kind of dive into what will and won't be working. What will be working is, hey, you're going to be able to play Stadia with your controller on the TV. There's some caveats there, or you'll be able to play them on a browser with a keyboard and mouse. And so we'll leave it at that. The baseline functionality will be there. But if you have a Chromecast Ultra and you're planning on picking up your controller when it ships to you eventually, potentially you'll get it on the day one or even a couple days after, depending on certain things. Anyways, if you're planning on walking around your house and using different TVs, you're out of luck. The Chromecast Ultra that ships with the Stadia Founders Edition has a slightly different firmware than the one you can go buy at Best Buy, and the update is not available yet. Google says that update will be coming out soon, but we don't quite know when, and so you'll only be able to use it with the Chromecast Ultra that is shipping in the device. So keep that in mind if you're planning on taking it to a friend's house or something like that. You're gonna have to take your Chromecast Ultra with you if you're planning on to play it on a big TV. Other things that people love, achievements. Achievements, while they are going to be available on Stadia, they're not going to be there on day one, unfortunately. Now, what happens is if you earn an achievement, you're not going to get a notification. But when that feature becomes available, which Google says in the coming weeks, all those achievements that you had earned will be unlocked. And they call it an achievement explosion, which is not a great way to think about it. But when that feature comes online, you will get credit for everything that has already happened. Family sharing and family link. Now, family link will work. So what this allows you to do is to control what your child is doing on the platform and set certain limitations. But family sharing, and this is kind of a big one here, is not going to work. So if you have 2 kids, or there's you and your brother, or you and your sister, or whoever are in the same house and want to use Stadia and play the same game, you're not going to be able to unless you buy 2 copies of the game. So for a $60 game, that's $120 to be able to play that game at the same time on Stadia. Now, they do say that this feature will be released or fixed or whatever they're calling it early next year, but we don't have an update yet. So family sharing is not available on day one, but it is still coming. Also, things like crowd play and Stream Connect. Crowd play is kind of like what it sounds like if you're watching a streamer online playing Stadia. It allowed you to kind of jump into their game or jump into the state where they are playing. That is not going to be available. And Stream Connect, which allows you to connect streams and bring content into your own Stadia, is not going to be working either. Also, if you're planning on dishing out those buddy passes to the guys that give you the best holiday shopping presents or whatever this year, buddy passes are not going to be available for a couple weeks. We don't quite know when they're coming, but Google says, hey, they are going to be coming here at some point. Other things that are worth pointing out here, and I'm checking my notes to make sure I get it correct, is data usage is going to be intense. Now, we kind of knew that this was a factor, but if you are planning on streaming, this is a 4K TV back here, if you're planning on streaming Stadia in 4K, Google is saying it is going to use up to 20 gigabytes per hour. Per hour. That is a lot of data. That is a lot of data. And if you have if you have any sort of data cap on mobile, that's going to be really rough. Playing it over like LTE or something like that, that's going to be pretty restrictive at 20 gigabytes an hour. Now, you're saying, okay, we'll put it down to 720p. That'll fix it. Well, 720p gaming is going to be at 4 gigabytes an hour, which is still pretty intense. I mean, if you figure you're going to play 10 hours a month of Stadia on the road or whatever, that's 40 gigs. It's 40 gigs of data that are just gone. So keep that in mind, that this is very data intensive. I think most people are going to be playing it at home, which presents other challenges because why pay for this at home and you can go get a console and stream? Anyways, so keep that all in mind. So now we know the launch titles. We've also gotten some visuals too. So I'm going to throw up some videos here that show what the Stadia UI is partially looking like here. We don't have a lot of information yet. Obviously, this is a really quick look at what Google showed off during the AMA. but it gives you kind of a first impressions of the Stadia UI that we will be experiencing next week. And I'm hoping that my controller will show up. It's currently saying, I think, the 20th to 21st. I'd love it if it showed up on the 19th, Google, but we don't quite know when it's coming. And I'm going to have a lot more information next week after I get my hands on it, latency and all that good stuff. Granted, they did do a test roughly about last year at this time that was pretty good. I believe it was with Assassin's Creed. And so we will see how Stadia launch goes next week. Obviously, Google is going to be rolling out features pretty frequently. They do this with all of their products, and this is going to be the day one experience. We know that with every gaming platform, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and of course Stadia, things are going to get better over time. You can't judge it by day one experiences, because after a month there's already going to be more features and it's hopefully only going to get better. The question is the ramp up to getting better going to surpass the cost that it is causing Google to invest in the service? Because they need to make money. They are a business after all. This is a commercial service, and Google is looking for ways to enter into this market. And well, Google has a rich history of killing products people like. But we will see what happens with Stadia here. Launch is happening next week. If you haven't ordered a Founders Edition, you're kind of out of luck at this point, accessing it on day one, I believe. But as we learn more and once we get our hands on it, keep it locked to the channel. We'll catch all of you right back here next time.